We have a great panel here with representatives from the Long Island Housing Partnership, Dave Gallo from Georgica Green, and the Honorable James Larocca, Mayor of the Village of Sag Harbor. And then you threw me into this, which I'm not sure. No, okay. Yeah. So I've kind of worn a few hats regarding affordable housing over the years. I think the main piece being principal of a CPA firm on Main Street, being kind of the ears, the eyes, and the voice of Main Street small business owners for the last 30 years, which is certainly an important equation to this process. I believe, I may be biased, but I believe the small business owner is probably one of the smartest people in the room at all times. They have to react to everything on a real-time basis. They have to make decisions. They have to allocate resources. They have to do the things on a flip of a switch. That being said, our inaction by our government leaders over the years has kind of thrown the small business owner a curveball. We've always been able to react to government inaction, or actually react to government action and be able to fix it. This inaction now has caused a tremendous problem. The East End community, the economy, hasn't had manufacturing for 50 years. Retail has basically fallen off a cliff the last 15 to 20 years. It's basically resolved into a service and hospitality business out here. And that situation has equated the lack of housing, has forced an immense reduction in staffing, which has really put a handcuff a lot of small businesses out here at this point. It's not only stymied economic growth, but it's also we're at the point now, a tipping point where we're retracting at this point. And I hate to say it, but you're gonna read about it, you're gonna see it. There's gonna be a lot of small business operations that aren't gonna make it through 2022, as a result of this situation. So while we are at a point now where we still have to act and we still have to do what you all are recommending that we do, it's important that we look at the small business community as a vested interest in this. And so when the decision makers, those of you who are sitting here and those of those that may have left, those decision makers should include the small business community in all decisions and discussions. It's important. My second hat is the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust, which I had formed back in 2006. As the result of being the recipient of the inclusionary housing fees, zoning fees from the Boulevard Watch Case Factory. We used those proceeds, I should say we leveraged those proceeds to purchase a 8-unit rental development product on Route 114 in East Hampton. We had the grand illusions that we were going to buy that property, redevelop it pretty quickly, and move on to the next project, saying this affordable housing is going to be pretty easy. None of us had any experience in it. Well, it was an eye-awakening experience. We went through 4 years of annual grant cycles to obtain funding to improve the property, only to be denied on all 4 cycles. I can remember sitting in a conference room in Lower Manhattan with representatives from the New York State Economic Development Corporation, where we wanted it to be graded. Why are we not winning these grants? Why are you awarding them to all other municipalities up in Nassau County and other areas? And the guy was very frank. The representative was very frank with us. He was like, don't you guys have enough money in East Hampton to resolve this issue on your own? And it was disheartening, but it also made us, change our course on how we were going to act at that point in time. So we understood that, if we were going to make a difference, that we had to try to do this locally. So we started working with the town of East Hampton. We identified a property adjacent to our substandard property that still is in existence today with 8 rental units. And we convinced the town of East Hampton to purchase the property next door, which they did. And they did so with tax dollars. They didn't garner money from the federal or the state government to do that. They used their own money, their own taxpayers' dollars to do so. There was another property that became available adjacent to that, and they did the same. They went out there and did so, which is wonderful. We are now, I'm happy to announce that we're going to be looking to develop a 30 to 50 unit rental project on Route 114 in East Hampton pretty quickly. At this point in time, East Hampton is really committed to it. We are committed to it. We believe it's in a great spot. due to the logistics and the access and so forth. But that's the type of action, and we really think this is a significant project because A, it's the first anywhere in and around Sag Harbor, but it's also a project that includes a kind of a compiled effort by the town of East Hampton, Wainscott School District. The funding came technically from the village of Sag Harbor to do so. It's kind of a collaborative local combination of people that really is going to push to get this done, and that's kind of the mindset that we're looking at, that this shouldn't be confined to municipality, but it transcends over a period of time. And I guess the last one, when I was mayor of the village, planning board chairman and trustee, and now that I'm not an elected official, I can actually say that I don't think it's any secret to anybody that our local officials have failed us tremendously over the last 40 years in terms of this issue, by not identifying it, by not addressing it, myself included. I was mayor for 8 years. I didn't do anything. So we now need to hold them completely accountable at this point in time regarding that action, because this inaction now has turned into an absolute economic crisis. It was you could say it's a social crisis because people can't find a place to live and so forth. If we don't have economic activity on the east end of Long Island, we don't really have much to be around for at this point in time. So. Now, that being said, I personally feel that we've turned a corner on this at the political level, at all levels, local level. I believe over the last year, the officials that campaigned on these promises are now holding their feet to the fire, and they are moving forward with some of their promises, obvious with their action by the town of East Hampton. And I'm going to specifically say the village of Sag Harbor. Now, I'll quote Tom Gardella, who was up here before. He's like, we can only do a little bit of a slice of the apple, what we can do. Well, that's if everybody does a little slice of the apple, then you're going to have something down the road. And I know Jim and his crew, the Board of Trustees, have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into this process and have made this not only awareness, but now they're taking action on it. And it seems like we've slowly turned the corner. And I think in addition to that action, the action by all of you by attending an event for 8 hours on a spring day certainly shows that you're all vested as well. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Peter Elkowitz, the Long Island Housing Partnership.
Hello? Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm Peter Elkowitz. I'm the president and CEO of the Long Island Housing Partnership. We've been around for 34 years here on Long Island, creating affordable housing opportunities. I've been there with the agency for 34 years. My colleague there next to me is James Britz, and he's been there for 22 years working with me tirelessly to try to get more affordable housing. I just want to say that this morning, all the sessions were excellent because it really brings it home, and I'm going to try to bring it home locally now. But we do have experience, both James and I, going across the country, looking at higher other cost areas like Park City, out in California, San Francisco. We look at all the high cost areas. And Greg, I had the same experience. When I did a fellowship up at Harvard, everyone said, oh, the East End is so wealthy. We watched that show about Southampton on TV. And I said, no, you have no idea that we also have poverty on Long Island, all right? And it doesn't matter whether you're watching those shows or not, they're not going to show you the poverty. And that's what we're here to point out, that we still need more affordable housing. So I want to just summarize this morning some of the things I heard. Obviously, when it becomes an economic barrier here, not to have affordable housing, when you don't have landscapers, when you don't have people working in the restaurants, when you don't have teachers, when you don't have medical staff, when you need medical staff, then it becomes an issue, right? So I think we're at the right time. It's never too late to start, and it's never too late to move forward, even if we have started into other areas. So today, I think I'm going to ask James to talk a little bit about other programs besides just building. But right now, we're going to just recap this morning. So we hear about NIMBYs, and now we hear about YIMBYs. I love YIMBYs. NIMBYs have probably taken much too much of my time being alive, fighting them all these years, because obviously they don't want anything in their communities, and it's still alive and well. Let me just tell you, we're still fighting them every day. We had another example yesterday. So I won't mention where that is, but we always come across it. We hear about the political structure and the political will. There is political will. We work with the elected officials who want to do something. Mayor Larocca was a chairman of the Long Island Housing Partnership back when I first started, in my early 20s. And now I'm well over 60, but we're still working towards it. But the bottom line is we're not going to stop until we get everyone in a home. The other thing we heard is about the cost. When we first started out, $25,000 in each house made it affordable, right, in subsidy. Now we're over $275,000 in each home, which brings us to a new way of looking at how we create affordable housing and how we keep that affordable housing in the pool out here, all right, and on Long Island. You don't want someone flipping it. I heard a little mention of it before on one of the speakers. But you don't want to flip a house that has $275,000 in subsidy so that that person who bought it can get rich and then move on. We do want them to share in the equity of housing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, because there's different models that are being used today on how you can share in the equity so that people can move on if they choose to. The other thing that I heard is land availability. Well, if we don't have land, we have to look at other ways that we're going to create affordable housing. So that's some of the programs that I exchanged to talk about in a moment. The transportation's a big issue. Obviously, we're not in New York City. We're out on Long Island, so transportation's always been an issue, and people need to get to and from work. Parking is always an issue when we go in for an approval. I heard someone say before about the approval time. Whether you're building a single-family home or a multi-family home, you got to go through basically the same approval process. So when you start looking at it, it almost takes 5 to 7 years. We have 2 cities on Long Island. We have 13 towns, we have 2 counties, we have 95, 96 villages, I think. The last time I counted before I came out here, I think it was 95 villages, but Mastic Beach was the last village, and it didn't survive, basically, right? It went back to the town of Brookhaven. So with all this governmental structure, we have the health department we have to deal with at the county's levels, we have the local level, and everything should be local, but again, it takes time to get a home processed with its building permits. And one thing I want to say, because there were some comments made this morning, is I think there's some issues that we look at that we can build it for a certain population. All the homes should be built totally taking into consideration fair housing issues. And I know Ian's over here, and I want to congratulate him on the work that he does to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to get into the homes that are built, the affordable homes. I try to stay away from the term projects. I heard that a few times this morning. I try to call them developments, because they're developments, all right? No one wants to live in a project, all right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have here, if you can switch it. Our mission basically is to help those who could not get into a home in the open market, to help them get into a home, whether it be a rental or a home ownership unit. A decent, safe one as well. So we do that in a few ways. We actually develop our own homes. We've developed single-family homes. We've developed multi-family sites, but we actually build the homes, and we hire a general contractor to work with. We also do it through technical assistance programs. I see some of the developers here that we work with, like Michael Butler, Dave Gallo. When there's assistance that's needed either at a municipal government level or with another not-for-profit, or with a local builder who has to or is required to build a certain number of affordable homes, we'll help them work on marketing those homes, renting them up, selling those homes, et cetera, to make sure that the right individuals who deserve those homes get into those homes. And if you want to change a little bit, we also manage those homes now. So we manage over 1,000 rental units that are built by private developers throughout Long Island, and make sure that the people, each year they're recertified to make sure that they still need that home, that they're not making $1 million now and they don't need that home if they used one of our rentals. If it's a home ownership unit, you know, we qualify the people to make sure they get it in the home at the time they qualify to close on that house. But a big part of this is education, because education in many ways. One is through mortgage counseling or rental counseling or default and foreclosure counseling to help people stay in their homes when you see the economy do a downtake right now, downturn. And also getting the word out about these programs, because a lot of people don't hear it until it's too late that these programs are there. And I heard someone ask earlier, how do you market these homes? There is usually a 30 to 45-day period that these homes open. People apply, and then it's literally by a lottery system because there's such a demand. We do take names afterwards on a first-come, first-served basis, but we exhaust those names on the lottery. We just did one yesterday. 161 people for 30 units, and it was open for 30 days. So during the COVID crisis, the first year, we did 10 lotteries. 80 homes were available for rentals, and then 20 homes were available for home ownership, and all those continue to be sold or rented. And I got to tell you, there was no lack of people applying for those homes. The other thing I want to say is advocacy. Advocacy is a big part. We spend a lot of time going around. I just got back last week from D.C., learning of where the federal government is looking to put their funds in the future. They're looking to put their funds mainly in what we call shared equity models, so that if it's a home ownership unit, they want to put it into shared equity models that include, it could be deed restricted, but it's not, deed restrictions don't work so well because someone could have it in the deed, they could recognize a windfall profit and then move on. So there's new models that they're looking at, limited equity co-op, I heard it earlier this morning. We did a 117 unit in Melville with a private developer, and we basically had the limited equity co-op developed, built, and I think it went fairly quickly. It was probably about 2 years, and we had it fully occupied. And I can't tell you, those units filled up immediately. And the other model that they're using is a community land trust model. We also are a community land trust. That's a separate not-for-profit corporation. So any home that we sell now in the future, the property goes into the land trust, and they have a 99-year lease. They own the structure that's sitting on there. If they go to sell it, we buy it back, or we sell it to another qualified individual that who would be the next person on the list to purchase it. But they do recognize a benefit. From the time they move in to the time they sell that unit, they get whatever the consumer price index is, all right, calculated from the days that they were there, and they get that benefit. On the limited equity co-op, the benefits are defined ahead of time in an offering plan. So there's a lot of ways to limit the exposure of someone flipping out a house, an affordable house, out of the market now and just selling it in the open market. And that's another whole process, but someone has to monitor these homes, that they just don't go out into the open market. So that's another whole area that we're looking into and we've been working on, and they have to come back to the Long Island Housing Partnership if they want to sell their unit, because either those subsidies that went in either needed to be subordinated or satisfied, so we get the money back. If you flip, we also are a community lending organization. I heard a lot this morning about lending on these developments. We are what they call a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. We have private funds at a reduced rate. We lend them out to people, developers who are looking to build affordable housing. We get those private funds from the banks. They get what we call community reinvestment credit. That credit goes back to the bank, and they loan those funds to us at a lower interest rate, and then we just, in turn, use it for our affordable housing developments. We also have a disaster relief corporation, which any disaster, because that's the only non-income program, income-based program that's out there, because if you got hit by a hurricane and you need assistance, the government does not put income limits on those funds. And the last, as I said, is the community land trust model. I'm going to stop there, and then James is going to go through some of our developments, if you want to.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So James Britz, Executive Vice President and COO of Long Island Housing Partnership. As Peter mentioned, we've been in existence for 34 years. Our initial existence and what we worked on first were single-family scattered site housing. It's been our bread and butter for 34 years. It's what we've worked on in all the communities across Long Island, and we've done many of them. But when you talk about the need that's out here, not only on the East End, but in both Nassau and Suffolk County, it's a tremendous need. So we're building 10, 12 scattered sites a year between both counties. Obviously, we're not making the numbers work. We're not meeting the need that's out there. So in order to do that, we started to look at different areas, not only just multifamily developments and single-family developments that we could get some land and make sure they're affordable. But also, this is a local one that we did about 15 years ago on Bridgehampton Sag Harbor Turnpike called Bridgehampton Muse. This was 12 units in total, 8 home ownership units, and the manor-style home here on the bottom right was the 4 ownership units and 4 accessory apartments next door, but it looked like a big manor home. So those are the kinds of designs that we try to fit into the community. We worked with the town of Southampton. We worked with a local group on the design issues and to try to blend it into what the community wanted. That's an important part. Even when we tell national builders when they come in, you got to meet with the community. You got to sit down with them. You got to talk to them and understand what they want, what kind of facade they want, what kind of aesthetics they want in the building, things like that. So that's always been our motto, is to work with each community that we go in and to try to make the best development that we can, and again, make it fit into the community as much as possible.
So I just want to say something about that. I was at a meeting in New York City with the state housing when I got a call when we were developing that, saying that we were creating an urban slum on 5 acres because, and creating an urban situation, building those units on 5 acres. And if you go there, you could ride past that place 10 times, you know, you wouldn't even know it exists there. So that, you know, it goes back to that NIMBYism, that is still a major player. So if we can remove some of that, it would be great, and you know, we can continue with our work.
Yeah, so I mean, here's a slide with just a few other developments that we've worked on over the years. A few of them in Bayshore, Amity Villas in the town of Babylon in Amityville. Cortlandt Square was our most recent, largest multifamily development we've done. That's on the bottom right here, Cortlandt Square in Bayshore. That was 40 ownership units, 20 at or below 80% area median income, and 20 of the units were at or below 120% of the area median income. So we were able to help 2 different income groups. And that community was a community that really needed some affordable housing, and even on the ownership side, because the hospital was expanding. It was since bought by Northwell, and there's still a tremendous amount of development, and now the rental side is being developed now in Bayshore. And Peter mentioned Michael Butler here. We did a development with him in Bayshore as well with a few rental units. So we're starting to see that end pick up. Again, this was the development we did, Cortlandt Square. And then about 15 years ago, I would say around 2007, 2008, what picked up was what we call our technical assistance side. So it's assisting municipalities, other nonprofits, or private developers create affordable housing on Long Island. It may be 100% affordable, like our limited equity co-op was in Melville, or it may have 10% affordable. It doesn't matter. We're willing to assist these parties who need it in order to make these types of units come into existence. And one of the first major ones we did was in the village of Patchogue. It was called Copper Beach. It was done by Pulte Homes, who's since left the island. But this was one of their larger developments. They did 80 condos right in downtown Patchogue, and 40 of those were affordable. It's 3 stories, but the first story was set up to be office space for people who need it. Which, you know, now looking at the last 2 years, probably worked out very well for the people who bought those, that they're working from home mostly. Again, here's a couple other examples of things we've done. You see a lot of it in downtown development. You see Patchogue, a couple more developments. Amityville, Gray Barnes, 100 affordable units out of 500 total units on Route 110. The Reserve in Yaphank, which is another one right there on William Floyd Parkway. And then you have a few developments across Farmingdale and then in Nassau County and Great Neck. So you can see the different development styles, the different looks of what we want to fit into the community. Again, this is working with each community, trying to decide what's best for that community, not going in and saying, well, we want 5 stories. The only way it's going to work is if I get 5 stories. You got to work with the community and decide what's going to fit into that neighborhood. Otherwise, you'll be stuck getting nothing done over 5, 7 years, 10 years. And then other programs that we do other than development and technical assistance. Peter mentioned it, education. We have people every day that we see. Used to be face-to-face, but now it's via Zoom until everything is over. But we educate them, we get them ready for the home buying process. We put them in touch with attorneys, with lenders. We look at the best product that might be out there for them. And then we also run ancillary programs like down payment assistance. We administer Nassau County's program, the Town of Babylon's program, and the Town of Brookhaven's program. Employer-assisted housing is another vital program. In today's market, it's a little bit more difficult to make down payment assistance and employer-assisted housing programs work because these programs allow the people to go out and buy on the open market. When you have income populations that we serve, either at or below 80, in the down payment programs, NDAH, or even to a higher income at 120%, they're still struggling to go out there and find homes on the open market. Sometimes they'll find a co-op in Nassau County that makes the program work. Town of Brookhaven, Town of Babylon, they have a little bit more a leeway to try and find some pockets of affordability. But we still see people using these programs. Northwell is our biggest subscriber to employer-assisted housing program. They fund up to 20 people a year who work for them. And what this program is, it's not only a down payment tool, but it also puts a rehab component in. So they're out there buying existing homes on the marketplace. It gives them up to $25,000 to go in and fix things up. Maybe electrical needs to be upgraded, heating systems, roof, siding. There's all different things that make it part of the program that they're allowed to do. And as Peter mentioned, Community Land Trust is our newest endeavor. We are in the process of completing over 35 different single-family homes over the next few years that we'll be putting solely into our Community Land Trust. And this is just a brochure that we have out there on it and just talking about it. And again, it's all around the shared equity model. There's many different models out there. Well, we've done, as Peter mentioned, the consumer price index calculation. We still utilize that in multifamily developments. But the Community Land Trust hopefully will create that type of atmosphere that people will stay. On our single family homes, we don't see people turn over very often. The multifamily downtown developments, because they're condos and they may be 2 bedrooms, we see a little bit more because people then get married and start families and want to move out and buy those single family homes. But on our single family models, we don't see much turnover at all. And I think that was everything, right? So that was it, and I'll be happy to stay around after to answer any questions.
That'd be great.
That too.
So it'd be great to get a perspective from a developer, private developer at this point, educate us on the trials and tribulations that you go through with local municipalities in dealing with these types of things.
We've never had any problem with any municipalities. They just sails right through. Yeah. Is there any chance I could get the slideshow up? Or maybe it just goes next? Okay. I'm going to grab some water while they're pulling it up. Thank you. All right. So my name is Dave Gallo. I am president of Georgica Green Ventures. So we are a development company, and we focus on affordable housing. The company's mission really kind of, was founded on the principles that affordable housing has a place in every community, right? And that diversity of income and diversity of race and diversity of age make our communities better, and they make our children smarter. And we've worked really hard throughout the entire state of New York to bring that to all communities. There's a couple of things that we try to do. Over the course of the last 10 years, we've done close to $1 billion, 17 projects, close to 1,500 units in affordable housing. But the things that sort of matter to us are super high quality. So we've talked about this, and I'm going to show a couple of slides. And the idea is for you to get the chance to know who we are as Georgica, some projects we've worked on. Then I'm going to bore everybody with tax credits on how we actually finance affordable housing, rental affordable housing. So the things that really matter, though, and that allow, as a developer, you're kind of taking the responsibility to allow for future development to happen, right? So we often start out, the developer's the villain coming into a community, right? And nobody wants to see the affordable housing, and the NIMBYism starts, right? But when you can actually build affordable housing and demonstrate it could be a positive impact through high-quality housing. So the things that we really, really focus on so that even other developers could use our housing as models is building super high quality that nobody feels like, you live in a community. We were just talking about it, right? Home ownership is it's so much pride, right? And somebody thinks what they worked for, this might impact their value in their home, right? So you have to demonstrate that the quality of the housing is going to be no different. In fact, we at Georgica try to actually outpace and kind of over-design and overbuild our housing, so no one can ever question it, no community. Second thing is efficient, sustainable construction. So sustainability is like a really important, item to this company. We build green homes, passive house homes. We work really hard with our architect to design something that's going to be super energy efficient and have a positive impact on the environment. We build modular homes. We have probably 5 going, actually driving out here. One of our projects in Roslyn was just awarded some modular home recognition, which is very important. Effective property management. So here's the thing, right? Once you get through town hall or the villages, right, and then you build a really nice property, you have to manage it really well. So like every developer can't just walk away from their development, and it can't be treated like a commodity, right? Because when developers treat real estate like a commodity, they just churn it, the affordable housing gets built, and then the property management falls short. This is where we try to make sure that every community that we've went into, and so Dave Gilmartin is here, he's our land use attorney, the promises that we make to the community, we actually, we stand up to, right? We say that it's not going to be a deterrent. We say that these things aren't going to, create, a bad environment, and then you actually have to fulfill that. Most of the communities that we've worked in, they still have my cell phone number. Things happen, right? You're never going to have a community that's something's not going to happen. Things are going to happen. Effective property management is the way that future affordable housing can get built. Since a lot of what we do has state funding or federal funding, right, we have minority-owned business requirements, we have women-owned business requirements, we've got requirements for disabled veterans, and through all of that, we decided to create within the company a workforce opportunity committee to make sure that we hit all of those requirements or we exceed them. And then also now we're looking at actually providing jobs to the communities that we're in through job fairs and getting interaction of it. Also, low-income individuals being able to actually work, not only just live there, but work on our sites. Okay, so this is basically what we've done. As I mentioned, it's about 1,500 apartments throughout Long Island, many of them out towards this direction. Couple of projects that we've done. So this one was done in Southampton. It was the town's first affordable housing development. This one right here, actually. They got financed together, and I heard some people talking about design. So working with the local planning department to ensure that I was going to say project, I was going to say it, okay, that the local development, fits in and always looks like it's been there, right? So I hope many of you have driven by Sandy Hollow Road, or driven down Sandy Hollow Road and actually have never noticed this development, right? Or that you felt like, boy, that's not a low-income housing development, and it is, right? So this particular project was 28 units. Dave and I did it, and super proud of it. And any of you on your way home, if you're going west, take Sandy Hollow Road, stop by, see it, drive it around. One of the things that we wanted to do was create this manor house and barn look, right? So that it kind of historically resembled the area, and that it fit in, and that people in the community didn't feel like there was an apartment development coming. And as a developer, you have to really take that into account, right? It can't be disingenuous. You have to communities know when somebody's yesing them and just gaslighting them. You actually have to do it and give it a shot. This is an interesting shot here, right? So the idea was that it looked like a home, right? So the idea was, we don't want an apartment development, we need affordable housing, but can it look like a manor house and home? So that door actually just goes into someone's bedroom. It's not a door, really. The second site is Spion Commons, 38 units. We sistered these two properties up to get state financing. I'll talk a little bit about that later. It sat right next to the Spion Commons, it is Spion Commons, the Spion train line, great transit-oriented development. We have a coffee shop coming in now, and any of you that take the train should stop there. So here's, again, the site. When it comes to zonings, it's about really meeting with the community and meeting and understanding them. When we take on developments, we will put ourselves out there and meet with the community. For instance, I think I am a private affordable housing developer, right? There's a lot of non-for-profits. Christine Villa, who used to be with Concern, we partnered up and we've worked together. But when a private affordable housing developer comes, they always want to know how much money we're making. It's like, you're making all of this money, how much are you making? And when you sit down with, and it's all state regulated, and it's all IRS based, and it's all transparent, right? So when you sit down with the community and you can actually show them your numbers and you can say like, hey, this is actually what I'm making. Like the more you can show, the less they'll feel so guarded about a developer coming into the community. And for all of you that are working in towns and municipalities, you know, tell your developer, like, it's all foilable, right? You could go to the state, there's no secrets, like share as much information. If there's a traffic study, give it to the community. Like one particular community recently, I said, they were concerned about traffic. I said, you pick the traffic engineer. I said, because if I pick it, you're gonna think that I controlled them, I manipulated the information, it's not gonna work. I said, you pick the engineer, we'll pay for it, they'll send it to you so that they recognize that the developer's not trying, let's say, that the developer's not misleading them in the information. Okay, Town of East Hampton, Katie Casey, Executive Director of the East Hampton Housing Authority. She's right here. We completed 38 units, Gansett Meadow, just recently, last year, finished it right up over here. Very proud of it, and something that we jumped off to our second project, which is the 3 Mile Harbor project. Will be 50 units in the town of East Hampton that we're doing together, which we hope to close next Thursday. We've started construction a bit, but the town of East Hampton really is very dedicated to delivering quality, affordable housing. This project's a little bit further west, downtown Riverhead. These particular stores were crushed by Superstorm Sandy. We purchased 2 sites, combined them, built 116 units on the river. There's the Peconic County Brewery there. We just leased up the entire Main Street. Sits near the Hyatt and the aquarium. Okay, so sustainability I talked about. It's a big component of who we are and what we want to do. There's a picture of the modular building that we're doing. Like, so why modular? I think that there's a much better way to do efficient construction. We're on our 5th project. I would say, you know, the first 2 were big learning experiences. I think we're finally getting it now. And it is a bit tricky, but there's a lot of very good positives to bringing on modular construction. There's some more pictures of the modular. It's pretty amazing when you can time it, right? So after foundations go in and all of your site work, I mean, we have buildings built in weeks, and it's been a great addition to the company. A couple of things that we're doing in Riverhead, master developer with RXR, going to be a great redevelopment in Riverhead, transit-oriented development on their current parking lot. So this is the building that Christina and I did together. So it's 135 units. It's called Surf Vets Place. That building, of the 135, 85 units went to formerly homeless veterans. 82, I stand corrected. So Coney Island went through this massive redevelopment and rezoning, and Georgica's been working with this company iStar to build out all of the developments. This was our second building that we just completed, called Raven Hall, 216 units, and 80-something of them go to formerly homeless domestic violence survivors. And all integrated, all services on site, and something that we're proud of. So affordable housing isn't just providing affordable housing, there is a supportive housing component too. Okay, so tax credits. I feel like this is where, right, this is where it gets a little interesting. So as a, well, at least to me, but so to no one else, I'm gonna make it very quick, but I want everyone to kind of understand this in this room, because there's a couple of key thoughts here, right? As a developer, all of our costs are the same, right? So we have to pay an architect the same, we have to pay the accountants, we have to pay our land use attorneys the same amount of money, and all of the construction costs are the same, right? So how is it, right? Like, what voodoo are we doing that's actually allowing us to have 30 years or 50 years of affordability, right? Like, that's really hard to do. By the way, a lot of people could keep things affordable for 5 or 10 years. The state program, 1986 Tax Reform Act, created a very, very good public-private partnership to allow developers and allow the state and the federal government to do this. And it should, you know, there's a lot of, you know, it's the most widely used affordable housing program in the country. So this is it, right? So it's Section 42 of the IRS code, yada, yada, yada. And ultimately, the point that I want to get to here is, right, so I mentioned, we pay our architect the same fees. We pay the construction, the plumber. We as a developer will go to the state of New York and request tax credits, and the state of New York will score an application. Our applications are 800 pages long, and they are fully vetted, and there are no secrets. Every line item, every budget, every zoning approval, everything gets put in there. Many developers throughout the entire state of New York compete for these I'm sorry. Whoops, I didn't realize I had my back to you. So developers like Georgica Green go and compete for these tax credits, and it is super competitive. You know, we're competing with Albany developers and Rochester developers and throughout the entire state, and we're trying to demonstrate why should the money come to Sag Harbor? Why should the money come to East Hampton or Southampton? And so for me, I've been telling them, because no money ever has, right? Like, there's a lot of deals that have gotten done, but very little have gotten done on Long Island, and much less have gotten done on the east end of Long Island, and deals are tough to do. So let's assume you're lucky enough to get the award of tax credits. Well, I can't pay people with tax credits, right? So I have to convert those tax credits to actual money. So what happens is, as a developer, we get an award of those tax credits, and we sell them to, you know, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs. And they then provide equity into the project. And I heard Peter say before, or it might have been the other panel, right, how important it is to have a down payment, right? And how much down payment can you have? So in tax credit housing, I've said it costs the same amount of money. The land isn't for any less. But what happens is, when we get these tax credits and we sell them and then we get back, we have very little mortgage on the property, right? So like in the top scenario, in a conventional project of $20 million, you've got your equity 35%. I guess we were saying it could have been 20, but whatever it is. And you've got debt of $12 million, right? So you've got the developer owner has to pay that $12 million, right? So their rents have to be a certain amount to cover that $12 million. But in the tax credit world, our debt is $4.5 million, because I've got all of this other money in tax credits and grants. So if I have less debt to pay, right, because I got these tax credits, I then can have rents that are less. And I could have rents that are less for 30 years or 50 years. And that's ultimately, in a nutshell, how a developer who has to buy land and pay everything and pay everyone to get a deal done, ultimately can have the rents affordable for a long period of time. So I think that is it. That is it. So thank you. And if anybody has any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Dave. That was a lot of information in a short period of time.
Sorry about that.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello? There we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to our fair village. I'm always pleased to be in the company of one of the very fine mayors. The description he was tossing back did not apply to the 8 years that he was in Village Hall. He was and is to this day a real asset in the village and a friend to pretty much everybody on Main Street and everybody who comes along. And when we bring an issue or a question to him, he's always there, and it's just a pleasure. And I'm very happy that he's here with us today. Let me say a couple of things about these other guys. 34 years ago, so Peter tried to claim a minute ago he was in his 20s, which would mean I was in my 30s. So the fact is, 34 years later, the Long Island Housing Partnership has been a spectacular success. And it's one of the, I'm not given to too much bragging, it's one of the things I brag about, because I was president of the Long Island Association. We had like 16 or 18 committees that all talked to each other all day long. And a fellow named Bob McMillan, our mutual friend, and I said, this isn't working. We're not going to have a committee. We're going to create a company. We created a company. In the 34 years, we've had only two presidents, Jim Morgo, who many of you know, and Peter. We raised Peter from a pup. He was, and James is just a virtual newbie. He's only been there, 22. He's just breaking in. That's right. But extraordinary success, particularly in this subject area, we're not used to recognizing success. Over 2,000 units of every description in every community, all over the island, and with sound, practical concepts that could work. When we put this together, we recognize that whatever you do in trying to tase the market, or whatever it takes to change things enough to be able to do the kind of things we're talking about here, affordable housing, you have to frequently introduce another element. And my last assignment in Albany before I went to the Long Island Association was as transportation commissioner. And new governor, Mario Cuomo, wanted us to inventory all the surplus property in the state, and we did. And I borrowed a couple of computer whizzes from Grumman. We put it all in the same computer. We had 55,000 pieces of excess property in the state of New York. Everything from a sliver along a roadway to an unrealized project like the north end of Seaford Oyster Bay, and everything in between. So the first item that could be brought to the subject of dealing with affordability was to find a way to get the ground for nothing, surplus property. The second was new governor, new administration, a lot of new energy, was to come up with an outright subsidy. And Mario used to talk about capitalistic socialists and socialistic capitalists, and he said, our rule is to stay in the middle of that. So we had very socialistic elements, very capitalistic elements, market, non-market, that worked. So these are the guys that over these years made it all happen. This is my newest acquaintance here, and we've talked about doing some projects together. And I don't know anyone that I've talked about or with in the time I've been involved in village government with a better reputation all over the island. It's interesting we talk about vocabulary. Projects, right, everybody thinks Robert Moses. Development, sometimes they just think developers. But in fact, this is the developer you want on a project where the public interest is at the table along with all of the other logical interests. I'll take you just for a few minutes through what we've done so far in the village. Yes, I did run on affordable housing and a few other things. The first thing that was clear to me, there were no easy answers, no quick answers. A lot of what I knew from prior life, including my work in founding the partnership, the housing partnership, was there's no such thing as one model fits all. And Peter and his colleagues stepped up as soon as I was elected and offered to be a sort of a consigliere to us and helping us think this through and find what worked over these years that applies essentially to affordable rentals, a different major environment that communities like this didn't spend a lot of time thinking about. And so we set out to try to get it right, which means we've taken a lot of time, 7 or 8 months now. On May 10th, we had what I thought would be the night where we would fully enact what we're doing. But the way it works at this level of government, when you have a bill, a local law, piece of legislation, if you amend it in any significant way, it's got to go back around the track. So you got to go back to the county, back to the towns, get referrals, get signed off. So we didn't get quite done last month. It is my hope and fervor that on June 14th, I think, is our second Tuesday meeting, we will finish the job of putting in place a 3-part affordable housing law and program. And I'm going to just take these few minutes to describe that to you. We broke the problem into 3 parts. The first part, somewhat easy part to understand, we're a very small village, we have very few people that work for us, and we need help. So we approached both towns, by then Peter Van Scoyoc and Jay Schneiderman, and the dotted line, by the way, as you know, runs right down Division Street. So we're like the custody child of two parents. We have East Hampton and Southampton, and we try to stay on good terms with both. And so we've asked both towns to be our administrator for the projects we will do in those towns. And they both stepped right up. We even talked about doing it as a common thing, but we decided it made more sense. There are two functioning, healthy, effective organizations in both places, and so our administration on what we're setting out to do will be assisted for us by the two towns. And I see Tommy John has come in, and that's a big part of what we're talking about, because a lot of our opportunities might lie on the west side of the dotted line, just given the configuration of the village. The two principal parts, the substantive parts, are these. We see the demand, the potential in two forms. One, what is now referred to as ADUs, accessory development units, an idea that's been with us forever without such a fancy name, and, forgive me, projects, but larger developments, multiple units of affordable housing. On the ADUs, small village like this that has grown organically without a master plan of any consequence for a very long time, and got most of it right. We're the most authentic village on the South Fork. We have the most diversity. We have the most variety of historic eras that have had an effect on what we look like, and the cultural institutions that have evolved. We've had a multiplicity of industries and all of that. And so our idea is that as all of that happened, an apartment here, a cottage there, a shed here, and so forth, there, and in a form that doesn't get counted very much, because a lot of those happened off the books, away from the assessor, probably not caught by the census very often. So a big part of this that we see is an opportunity to bring ADUs up into daylight, but with the full cooperation and interests of the owners at hand. And what we saw in Nassau and Suffolk when Levittown, the historic model for post-war Long Island, was there came a point where more than 50% of the homes in Levittown had slipped little units into those houses. Garages, a dormer over the garage, expansion of the attic, a little bit like that. Why would that happen? Well, there was a market demanding affordable housing. And the need was to serve the next generation, but also the post-war generation who had come out and built Levittown, that as seniors now wanted to stay in the community where they had made their lives, but couldn't afford to. And so the town of Hempstead, in that case, later the town of Huntington, North Hempstead, began to legitimize, if you will, all of the secondary units that had emerged and create a protocol for adding, but with code, with safety, with fire, sanitation, and all of those things. And there's a version of that in what we're talking about here. We're not Levittown, we're not cookie cutters, we're none of that, but we have over the years found a lot of little ways to put a unit here and a unit there. We want to work in that mode, and so the bill, the second bill, is the bill for affordable, accessible, accessory units. The details we can get to, but that's the second leg of the stool. The third is multiple unit developments. We have, I think, officially right now, fewer than 20 empty buildable lots, residential lots, in the village. We're built. So when we talk about projects, bigger developments, where are we talking about? Well, a precious few number of places. And nevertheless, they can make an enormous difference. And we have put together, drawing on East Hampton, Southampton, the good offices of the state, the county, in the private sector as a not-for-profit. Mr. Gallo, who's more experienced probably on how to put, he's a developer, but he's more experienced in how to bank these things than a lot of people I've talked to. There's credits and it's confusing, and different federal, state, and local. So what our aim there is to identify the opportunities for larger, multiple units and figure out how to make it happen. Does it mean we have to talk about subsidy? Well, not in the way when the state could put $25,000 a unit out there, but there are a lot of programs that the state and the federal government and the county and the towns are all involved in, and we will partake of every bit of that to make some multiple units. Everybody asks me about the west side of town. Yeah, we're looking at all of that property over there. A lot of it that's not built. And so that's a logical place for us to be looking. But we're also looking at smaller locations. I'm not going to mention any to create any undue interest too early, but where you see a place in one form that might take 6 or 8 or 10 units, we should look at that. Not everything's going to be 60, 80, or 100 or Riverhead numbers where you get into 3 digits. How exciting that would be. But that's not our program. We're not big enough for that. So your village is on the brink of this month putting those 3 tools in place, and then the real hard work begins. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Megan. I'm 30 years old. I live with my dad. I pay him $1,000 every month to live there because I can't afford anywhere else to live. I would love to be out on my own. I'm pretty successful in my own life, but I am now supporting my family before I even get a chance to get my own shelter of my own. It's really disheartening, and I guess my question is, having grown up here and seeing all the change and seeing all the big money come in and people like me leaving, and hearing how building affordable units, I've heard my whole life, it's too complicated. It's not, we can't build, there are so many reasons why we can't do that. But then I see things like the Watch case go up and how their sewers are functioning, I don't know. Glover Street used to be a lot of open space. It's now like Billionaire's Row. Multifamily housing on Amity, Suffolk, Madison, Howard Street, and even Main Street, multifamily houses that were sold for like $1 or $2 million in the last 10 years are now being sold for over $10 million. So, as single family residences, mind you. So, my question is, if we can't build, then how do we maybe put restrictions or regulations on the developers that are building and buying these lots to build luxury single-family homes? Because there seems to be a lot of that happening when affordable housing, it's too complicated to do.
I can't push that off on anybody. Let me tell you something about this young woman. She is, my family, we used to be told, don't just complain, do something. Megan has come forward. She's joined one of our boards, one of our village boards, which is an unpaid, selfless piece of work, and is getting rave reviews at that board, and we appreciate that. About 3 or 4, 6 months now that you've been on the board. So thank you for that, Megan. I don't want to create a distraction or get ahead of ourselves, but what we did in the overlay district for the waterfront is made the Board of Trustees, your elected government, a mayor and 4 trustees, the final word on any project, home, residence, commercial property over 3,500 square feet. So it would consolidate in one location in this governmental structure where the biggies have to come and be held to the code as we have it, the code as we might yet change it, and to create consistency, which we don't always get very right in this village. The process we have now, you go to the Harbor Committee to be consistent with LWRP, you go to planning for the site review, you go to ARB if there's a historic element, you go to ZBA if you want us to disregard the code. ZBA's business is to, in some respects, evade or avoid the code as it's written. I have a lot more faith in the code than that, and so I said to my colleagues, let us try this being the final stop on 3,500 square feet, and I think based on what we learn now with that power that we've taken, we should consider extending that authority to the entire village. Right now, it's only in the waterfront overlay district. That would be part of a much larger effort, but it's a step in the direction I think that Megan and others would like to see us take.
I have a question about financing for you. So I noticed you gave an awesome presentation on the housing credits and how that makes rental communities feasible, which is awesome. One of the things, so Shelter Island, we're really, really tiny. And one of the things that we've definitely faced is, kind of in exploring those options, the first thing that I got told was, you're way too tiny. And so I noticed also in some of your presentations that you're bundling stuff together. So it seems like you have a really good grasp on financing and how to make rental properties possible. What are your ideas for really small communities that maybe don't have stuff to bundle, or just like opportunities to make it feasible? Anyway, I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts. You've obviously spent a lot of time on this.
Okay, it does, yeah, okay. So I think that most of the dollars that we receive come federally, then they go to the state. So talking to New York State Homes and Community Renewal, right? And what we've been doing is talking to them and explaining that Shelter Island is not Hicksville, right? And that the programs that exist for the state need to also shape all of Long Island, and that we'll never see the density, and we're never gonna have sewers, right? So these things are just non-starters, and the land that we bought in East Hampton was a lot more than another developer would pay, right? And there is an amazing group of people at the state, Commissioner Visnaskis and her team will listen, right? So we've been telling them we're working on a 24-unit project in Cutchogue. Don't know if it'll happen, but that would be our smallest, but we're communicating and saying, here are the budgets, here's what we need for the project to be feasible, but we also don't want the project to jeopardize quality, sustainability, and we like to have property managers on our sites so that there's on-site supervision and that like everything, within the community works. So I think to answer that question, it's working with the state to say like, we're here, right? And we have a need for housing. We're never gonna get 116 units in Riverhead, let alone 24, maybe in Cutchogue might be a lot, right? So, and they are working to meet now all the needs of the entire state. And I can tell you who to call.
I just had one follow-up
Yeah.
question. So one of the things is, just thinking about the unit size. Like, I noticed that you said that
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
That, you could like bundled some of the developments
Yes.
together. For smaller communities, do you think it's ever feasible for adjacent communities to bundle projects together, or is the zoning just too ridiculous?
I think
I mean,
that
for the developer
I think you
credit
can.
sides.
I think you can. I think you totally can. So Sandy and Spionk while both in the town of Southampton, were 14 miles away, right? So
Okay.
they really weren't that close together. Like everybody's like, oh, they're both in the town of Southampton, but they were 30 minutes away, and to get over the Shinnecock Canal can take you a long time, right? So they're not that close. I think that, yes, if a developer has two projects that might be in separate towns, I think the state would be very willing to say, okay, we have now 15, 30 units, we can bundle to them together.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you?
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing too. If you saw Dave's model there, right? The tax credits was one portion. Tax credits, very expensive for legal services to go through that,
Yeah.
so you have some fixed costs. But those other numbers below that, all right, like the home subsidy that he had in that his budget, et cetera, you can do that for less units, all right? And you can probably try to get more per unit. So it's all a puzzle when you put these financing packages together. Now, I just want to be honest. I mean, you know it. So like in some of our cases, we combine 7 funding sources to make it affordable. So, and then the most restrictive is the one we have to follow the regulations under. But even foundations are willing to put money in. Some large and not-for-profits, you know, you can reduce the cost by using like a community development financial institution. You may get tax incentives, right? You know, tax breaks, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that you can make that affordable. It's how you get that puzzle together at the end to make it affordable is what counts.
Great, I think we're out of time now,
Okay.
guys, but I'd like to thank all of you for.
Thank you.